I'm standing on the marble steps of my newly purchased $50 million oceanfront resort, watching my mother and sister drive up in their rental car for what they think is a family reconciliation weekend. They have no idea I own this place. For 8 years, Mom claimed her modest beach house had no room for my 2 young children during family vacations. My sister Jessica mocked my software consulting as a little hobby while flaunting her trust fund lifestyle. Today, they discover who really built an empire. The foundation of this story begins 5 years ago when my father passed away suddenly from a heart attack. I was 28 then, recently divorced, and struggling to raise my 2 children, Emma, who was 3, and Jake, who was 1. Dad's death shattered our family in ways I never anticipated, but what hurt most was how it revealed the fault lines that had always existed beneath the surface. My mother, Helen, inherited Dad's comfortable beach house in Cape Cod, a charming 3-bedroom cottage that Dad had bought back in 1989 as a fixer-upper. Over the years, he'd transformed it into the family gathering place, where we spent every major holiday and summer vacation. The house held decades of memories, from my childhood sandcastle competitions to teaching my own kids to swim in the shallow tide pools nearby. After the funeral, I desperately wanted to maintain these family traditions for Emma and Jake. They'd lost their grandfather and were dealing with their parents' recent divorce. I thought keeping them connected to family memories might provide some stability in their chaotic little world. The first rejection came that spring when I called Mom excitedly about bringing the kids for 4th of July weekend. I'd already told Emma and Jake about the plans, and they were bouncing off the walls with anticipation. Emma had been practicing her swimming strokes in our apartment complex pool, determined to show Grandma how brave she'd become in the water. Mom's response was like ice water. "William, you know the house barely fits Jessica and her family. Maybe next time." Her tone was dismissive, almost annoyed that I'd even asked. I stood there holding the phone, watching Emma and Jake playing with their toy boats in the bathtub, completely unaware their summer dreams were crumbling. "Mom, I could bring air mattresses. The kids could sleep in sleeping bags. They just want to be part of the family tradition." "It's just not practical, dear. Jessica's 3 children need proper beds, and David needs his rest between his medical conferences." Jessica's children somehow always had reserved spots. Madison, Connor, and little Sophie got the 2 guest bedrooms, while Jessica and her husband David took the master suite. When I suggested that maybe we could alternate years or share weekends, Mom acted like I was being unreasonable. I hung up that night and found Emma standing in the hallway in her pajamas. "Daddy, are we going to see Grandma's beach this summer?" Looking into her hopeful brown eyes, I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. "We'll see, sweetheart. Grandma's still making plans." But the rejections kept coming. Memorial Day weekend was booked. Labor Day weekend was reserved for Jessica's family. Even random weekends in August were somehow unavailable. The excuses became a familiar pattern. "It's just not practical, dear." What I didn't know then was that each rejection was carefully calculated. I discovered this truth 2 months later through the most casual conversation imaginable. I was dropping off a package at the Miller's house next door to Mom's beach cottage when Mrs. Miller mentioned how lovely the new addition looked. "Addition?" I asked, confused. "Oh yes, your mother's winter project. Those 2 beautiful new bedrooms and the updated bathroom. She must be so pleased to finally have space for everyone." My blood turned cold. Mom had expanded the beach house the previous winter, adding 2 bedrooms and a full bathroom. She'd never mentioned it to me, not once. Every time she'd claimed there was no room, she'd been lying. She had a 5-bedroom house, with space for 12 people comfortably, and she was still telling me there wasn't room for my 2 small children. The no-room excuse wasn't about logistics, it was about favoritism. It was about choosing Jessica's family over mine, systematically and deliberately. Standing in the Miller's driveway that afternoon, I realized my children weren't just being excluded from vacations, they were being erased from family history. The pattern intensified over the next 2 years as my software consulting business began gaining momentum. I'd started the company 3 years earlier, building cybersecurity solutions for small businesses. While I was landing bigger contracts and hiring employees, my family treated my work like a hobby compared to Jessica's life as a trust fund recipient married to a prominent cardiologist. Memorial Day weekend of the following year, I called Mom 2 months early to secure spots for Emma and Jake. I'd learned to plan ahead, thinking advance notice might help. "Oh, honey, Jessica already booked the whole weekend for David's medical conference colleagues," Mom said, not even pausing to consider alternatives. I felt my jaw clench. What medical conference colleagues? David's organizing a networking weekend for the other cardiologists in his practice. Very important for his career development. This was news to me. Jessica had never mentioned David hosting colleagues before. It felt suspiciously convenient. "Mom, couldn't they do this networking at a hotel? This is supposed to be family time." "William, you need to understand that David's career requires certain social obligations. These men earn very substantial incomes, and maintaining those relationships matters." The implication was clear. David's career mattered. Mine didn't. Labor Day weekend brought another creative excuse. Jessica's organizing a wine-tasting weekend for adults only. You understand how sophisticated wine appreciation requires a mature palate. "Your children are still so young," Mom explained. "They wouldn't appreciate the beach anyway." Emma was 5 by then, and Jake was 3. The perfect ages for building sandcastles and collecting shells, but apparently too young to appreciate the ocean. Christmas that year finally gave me a front row seat to the family hierarchy. We all gathered at the beach house for the holiday, and I got to witness the accommodation arrangements firsthand. Jessica's 3 children got the 2 guest bedrooms, plus one of the new addition bedrooms. Jessica and David took the master suite. Mom kept one new bedroom as her office space that doubled as storage for Jessica's family's belongings. Emma and Jake got sleeping bags in the living room. I watched my 5-year-old daughter trying to get comfortable on the hardwood floor, while her cousins complained about thread count in their comfortable beds upstairs. When Emma asked why they couldn't have real beds like Madison and Connor, I didn't have an answer that wouldn't break her heart. "Daddy, why doesn't Grandma like us?" she whispered that night as I tucked her sleeping bag around her tiny shoulders. I knelt down beside her, my heart shattering. "She loves you, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that don't make sense." But I knew she was right. Mom didn't like us. Or more accurately, she didn't value us. We were the consolation family, the ones who got leftovers after Jessica's family had taken their fill. The next morning, as I helped Emma and Jake pack their sleeping bags, Jessica made one of her casually cruel comments that would stick with me for years. "Maybe if you had a real job instead of playing with computers, Mom would take you more seriously." She said it while sipping coffee from Mom's good china, the special cups that only came out for important guests. I was drinking from a chipped mug I'd used since high school. "My computer work pays for my children's health insurance and their daycare," I replied quietly. Jessica laughed. "That's adorable. David's Christmas bonus last year was probably more than your whole annual income." I didn't respond because arguing with Jessica was like wrestling with fog. But her words planted a seed that would grow into something much larger. If real jobs and substantial incomes were what earned respect in this family, I'd show them what a real job looked like. The breaking point came 3 months later when I overheard a phone conversation that shattered any remaining illusions about accidental scheduling conflicts. I'd arrived early to pick up Emma and Jake from a weekend visit with Mom when I heard her talking to Jessica through the kitchen window. "So we're all set for Sophie's birthday party weekend at the beach house?" Mom was saying. "Absolutely. The caterer confirmed for Saturday, and I've invited 12 families from her preschool. It'll be perfect." "And William doesn't know about the party?" "God, no. Can you imagine? He'd want to bring Emma and Jake, and Sophie's friends' parents don't need to deal with divorced dad drama." They were planning Jessica's youngest child's birthday party for the exact weekend I'd requested months earlier for Jake's 4th birthday. They weren't just excluding us anymore. They were actively planning around our exclusion, using the beach house as a social tool for Jessica's networking, while ensuring my children never got to experience the magic of family celebrations in the place that should have been their heritage too. Standing outside that kitchen window, listening to my mother and sister conspire against my children's happiness, something fundamental shifted inside me. The hurt was transforming into something much more powerful: determination. By spring of that year, my software company had achieved something extraordinary. We'd landed an $8 million contract with the Department of Defense to develop cybersecurity protocols for military installations. It was the kind of breakthrough that transforms a small consulting firm into a legitimate technology company overnight. Our team had grown to 15 employees, and industry publications were writing articles about our innovative approach to network security. I was bursting with pride and excitement when I called Mom to share the news. This felt like the moment when my family might finally understand that my computer work wasn't a hobby. It was a thriving business that was making a real difference. Mom, I have incredible news. We just signed a contract with the Department of Defense for $8 million. The Pentagon is using our cybersecurity software. There was a pause that lasted too long. That's nice, dear. Listen, I need to run. I'm helping Jessica plan her vacation to Martha's Vineyard. That's nice, dear. $8 million from the United States government was nice, dear. I'd just achieved something that put my company in the top tier of cybersecurity firms nationwide. And my mother's response was the same tone she'd use if I'd told her I'd found a good parking spot. Mom, do you understand what this means? This contract validates everything I've been building. We're not just a small consulting firm anymore. I'm sure it's very exciting for you, William, but I really do need to help Jessica. She's planning this elaborate anniversary trip for her and David, and there are so many details to coordinate. I hung up feeling deflated and angry. Nothing I achieved would ever matter to them. I could cure cancer or invent time travel, and they'd still see me as the little brother playing with computers while Jessica lived her trust fund princess life. As 4th of July weekend approached, I decided to make one final attempt to include my children in family traditions. Emma was 6 now, and Jake was 4. They were old enough to remember being excluded, old enough to internalize the message that they weren't important enough for family celebrations. I called Mom with what I thought was a reasonable proposal. I'm willing to pay for hotel rooms nearby for me and the kids. We don't need to stay at the beach house. I just want Emma and Jake to be part of the family beach day and barbecue. Mom's exasperated sigh came through the phone clearly. William, this is exactly what I mean. You're being pushy and dramatic. The weekend is planned, and adding more people changes the whole dynamic. More people? Mom, they're your grandchildren. They're children who need constant supervision. Jessica's kids are older and more independent. Before I could respond, I heard Jessica's voice in the background asking for the phone. Mom handed it over without asking if I minded. Look, little brother, Jessica said, using the condescending tone she'd perfected over 30 years. Just accept that some people are beach people and some aren't. Instead of trying to insert yourself into our plans, why don't you get your own vacation? Jessica, I'm not trying to insert myself. I'm trying to include my children in their own family. She laughed, and the sound was like fingernails on a chalkboard. When your computer hobby becomes a real business, maybe we'll talk. But until then, stop making everything about you. I was still processing the insult when my phone buzzed with another call. My lawyer's name appeared on the screen. I need to take this, I told Jessica. Sure, go play businessman, she said before hanging up. The call from my lawyer changed everything. William, I have an interesting opportunity I wanted to discuss with you. There's a luxury resort property coming available through a bankruptcy proceeding. Ocean Vista Resort on Cape Cod. Are you familiar with it? I nearly dropped the phone. Ocean Vista Resort was legendary in our area. It was the most exclusive property on the same stretch of coastline where Mom's beach house sat, about 2 miles north. The resort had been built in 1923 and had hosted presidents, celebrities, and foreign dignitaries for decades. It featured 50 oceanfront suites, 3 restaurants, a championship golf course, and a private beach that stretched for over a mile. The current owners overextended themselves with renovations and can't meet their debt obligations, my lawyer continued. The property is going to auction, but there's an opportunity for a direct sale if someone can move quickly with cash. As he spoke, I found myself looking out my office window toward the harbor. My kids were at daycare, probably playing with toys while other children talked about summer vacations with their families. Emma had stopped asking about Grandma's beach house, which somehow hurt more than her questions had. What kind of numbers are we talking about? I asked. 52 million, for the complete property, including all furnishings, equipment, and existing bookings. I know it sounds like a lot, But with your company's recent valuation and the DoD contract, it might be possible to structure the financing. The irony was overwhelming. My family always talked about Ocean Vista Resort as the kind of place that was too expensive for regular people. Dad used to drive us past it when we were kids, pointing out the helicopter pad and telling us stories about the famous guests who'd stayed there. It was the ultimate symbol of luxury and exclusivity in our area, and now I could buy it. I looked at the framed photo on my desk, showing Emma and Jake building a sandcastle in our apartment complex sandbox. They deserved to experience the beach the way I had as a child, the way Jessica's kids did every summer. But more than that, they deserved to feel valued and included by their own family. "Send me the financial details," I told my lawyer. "All of them." After hanging up, I sat in my office chair thinking about Jessica's words. "Get your own vacation," she'd said. "When your computer hobby becomes a real business, maybe we'll talk." I was about to show them what a real business looked like. Over the next 18 months, I lived a carefully orchestrated double life. To my family, I remained the struggling single dad with the computer hobby, showing up to occasional family events in my regular clothes, driving my practical Honda sedan, and listening to their continued dismissive comments about my career. Meanwhile, I was secretly purchasing and transforming Ocean Vista Resort into the most luxurious family destination on the East Coast. The property inspection took place on a foggy October morning, when I knew my family would be occupied with Jessica's elaborate Halloween party planning. I met the real estate agent at the resort's grand entrance, a sweeping marble staircase flanked by columns that had welcomed guests for nearly a century. Walking through the property for the first time felt like exploring a forgotten palace. The main building featured soaring ceilings with hand-painted murals, crystal chandeliers from Austria, and hardwood floors that had been carefully maintained since the 1920s. Each of the 50 suites offered unobstructed ocean views, private balconies, and bathrooms with imported Italian fixtures. But it was the children's amenities that captured my imagination. The resort had been designed during an era when wealthy families traveled with multiple generations. There was an enormous heated pool complex, with a dedicated children's area featuring water slides and fountains. The private beach included supervised activity areas where kids could learn sailing, kayaking, and marine biology. There were tennis courts, a miniature golf course, and even stables with gentle horses for riding lessons. This wasn't just a luxury hotel. It was a place where families could create lifelong memories together. The previous owners invested heavily in renovations, the agent explained as we toured the spa facility. They updated all the mechanical systems, added fiber optic internet throughout, and obtained permits for helicopter access. Unfortunately, they ran out of capital before they could reopen. I found myself envisioning Emma and Jake running through these halls, splashing in the pools, learning to ride horses on the beach trails. But more than that, I imagined other families experiencing the joy of being together in a place designed specifically for connection and celebration. The financing came together more smoothly than I'd expected. My software company's valuation had reached $24 million following the DoD contract, and our expanding client base included Fortune 500 companies and government agencies. Banks were eager to work with us, especially when they saw the resort's historical revenue figures and the tourism projections for Cape Cod. I structured the purchase through a holding company to maintain privacy. As far as public records showed, Ocean Vista Resort was being purchased by Atlantic Hospitality Group, a mysterious investment firm with offshore connections. I wanted to control the timeline of revelation carefully. The renovation and restoration process became my secret obsession. I hired the best hospitality designers in the country, importing marble from the same Italian quarries used in the original construction. We installed infinity pools that seemed to blend seamlessly with the Atlantic horizon. The spa was expanded to include treatments specifically designed for families, with side-by-side massage rooms where parents and children could relax together. The staff hiring process was equally meticulous. I recruited from 5 diamond hotels and resorts nationwide, looking for professionals who understood that luxury hospitality wasn't just about thread count and champagne service. It was about creating experiences that families would treasure forever. During this time, I maintained my appearances at family events like an actor playing a role. At Jake's 5th birthday party, which we celebrated at a local pizza restaurant because Grandma's beach house wasn't available, Jessica made her usual comments. "Still playing with computers, little brother? When are you going to get a real job that actually matters?" I smiled and helped Jake blow out his candles, knowing that 2 miles away, construction crews were installing a playground that would make any 5-year-old boy think he'd discovered paradise. Mom's dismissive comments continued as well. At Emma's school holiday concert, where Jessica's family occupied the front row while I sat in the back, Mom mentioned how nice it must be that my work was so flexible. "It's wonderful that your computer hobby gives you time to attend these little school events," she said with what she probably thought was kindness. "Jessica and David are so busy with important commitments that they have to be very selective." I nodded and took photos of Emma singing in the children's choir, knowing that in 6 months I'd be hosting grand opening celebrations for governors, senators, and business leaders from around the world. The most challenging part of the double life was managing my children's expectations. Emma and Jake could sense that something big was happening in Daddy's work life. I was taking more business trips for site visits and staff training. I was on phone calls with architects, interior designers, and hospitality consultants. But I couldn't explain what I was building because I wanted the reveal to be perfect. "Daddy, are you building something really big?" Emma asked one evening as I reviewed renovation plans after putting them to bed. "Maybe, sweetheart. Would you like it if Daddy built something special for families? Like a place where kids could play and parents could be happy together?" Her innocent wisdom took my breath away. Exactly like that. Spring arrived with final preparations for the resort's grand opening. Local newspapers were already buzzing about the mysterious new owners of Ocean Vista Resort. The Cape Cod Times ran a feature story about the massive renovation project and the rumored investment of over $15 million in improvements. The headline read, "Mysterious Tech Mogul Transforms Historic Ocean Vista Resort." The article included aerial photography showing the stunning transformation of the property, with the infinity pools, expanded spa, and new family recreation areas clearly visible. What the photographer had captured unknowingly was my mother's modest beach house in the background, looking like a tiny cottage in the shadow of my sprawling resort empire. I knew my family would see the article. I knew they'd start asking questions, and I knew the moment of revelation was finally approaching. As I stood on the resort's main balcony that evening, watching the sunset paint the Atlantic in shades of gold and crimson, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not because I'd built something impressive, though I had. Not because I'd proven my business was real, though I had done that too. I felt satisfied because I'd created something that would give families the opportunity to be together in a place designed specifically for love, connection, and celebration. Something my own children had been denied, but would now have forever. The grand opening was 3 weeks away. Soon, my family would discover exactly what kind of empire their computer hobbyist had built. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in late May, 3 days after the Cape Cod Times article hit newsstands across Massachusetts. I was in my resort office, reviewing final preparations for our grand opening weekend, when Mom's number appeared on my phone. Her voice was different when I answered, higher-pitched, nervous in a way I'd never heard before. "William, I saw the most interesting article in the newspaper yesterday about Ocean Vista Resort having new owners. Some kind of technology executive who's invested millions in renovations." I leaned back in my leather chair, looking out at the ocean view that would soon welcome our first guests. "That does sound interesting, Mom. What about it?" "Well, the article mentioned the new owner has a software company, and I thought, it couldn't be, could it?" The moment had arrived. After 18 months of secret planning, construction, and preparation, my family was about to discover the truth. I felt surprisingly calm. "What are you asking, Mom?" "William, please just tell me. Are you somehow involved with Ocean Vista Resort?" I paused, thinking about all the times she'd claimed there was no room for my children, all the dismissive comments about my computer hobby, all the evenings Emma and Jake had spent wondering why Grandma didn't want them around. "I'm not involved with Ocean Vista Resort, Mom. I own it." The silence stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. Then I heard her breathing, quick and shallow. You own it? The entire resort? Every square inch? 50 oceanfront suites? 3 restaurants, spa, golf course, private beach, helicopter pad, all of it. Another long pause. But how is that possible? That place must be worth $52 million. I bought it in cash. I heard her gasp, followed by what sounded like her sitting down heavily in a chair. Before she could respond, my phone beeped with another call. Jessica's name appeared on the screen. Mom, I need to take this. It's probably Jessica calling with similar questions. I switched to Jessica's call without waiting for Mom's response. William, what the hell is going on? Jessica's voice was sharp, angry, confused. Mom just called me crying about some newspaper article. She says you bought Ocean Vista Resort? That's impossible. Why is it impossible, Jessica? Because that place costs more money than people like us ever see. You'd need to be worth, I don't even know, $20 million? $50 million? More? My company's current valuation is $43 million. But I didn't need to sell the company to buy the resort. I had sufficient cash reserves from our government contracts and private sector deals. The silence from Jessica was even longer than Mom's had been. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost all its usual condescension. You're serious? You actually own Ocean Vista Resort? Grand opening is this weekend. We're hosting the governor of Massachusetts, 3 senators, and about 200 business leaders from across New England. The Boston Globe is sending their travel writer to review our family amenities. I don't understand. When did this happen? Why didn't you tell us? The question was so absurd I almost laughed. When would I have told you, Jessica? During one of our conversations about my computer hobby. Maybe I should have mentioned it when you were explaining how some people are beach people and some aren't. I could hear her struggling to process this new reality. The little brother with the fake job had somehow become wealthy enough to purchase the most exclusive resort on Cape Cod. William, I think there's been some misunderstanding between us. I've always supported your business. I always believed you'd be successful. Now I did laugh. Really? Because I specifically remember you telling me that when my computer hobby became a real business, maybe we'd talk. I never said that. You said it 3 months ago when I called about bringing Emma and Jake to 4th of July weekend. You told me to get my own vacation instead of inserting myself into your plans. The conversation was interrupted by my assistant knocking on the office door. Mr. William, the helicopter from Boston, is arriving in 10 minutes with the restaurant critics from Food and Wine magazine. I looked out at the helicopter pad where a sleek aircraft was indeed approaching for landing. This was my life now. Restaurant critics arriving by helicopter to review my resort's dining options. Jessica, I need to go. I have business to handle. Wait, William. Obviously, we should plan a family reunion at your resort. This is incredible. We need to celebrate your success as a family. That's an interesting idea. Let me think about it. I hung up and immediately called Mom back. She answered on the first ring. William, I owe you an enormous apology. I had no idea your business had become so successful. I'm incredibly proud of what you've accomplished. Are you, Mom? Because for 8 years you've told me there wasn't room for Emma and Jake at family gatherings. Now you want to celebrate my success? That was different. The beach house really was small, and managing multiple families with young children was complicated. The beach house has 5 bedrooms and sleeps 12 people comfortably. I know because I've reviewed the rental listings you post online. Another sharp silence. What rental listings? OceanViewCapeCodCottage.com. You rent the beach house to strangers for $800 per night on weekends when you tell me there's no room for my family. I heard her sharp intake of breath. I'd done my research thoroughly. For 3 years, Mom had been running the beach house as a vacation rental business, advertising it as perfect for large family gatherings, while simultaneously telling me it was too small for my children. Those rentals help me maintain the property. The income pays for upkeep and repairs. The same weekends I requested for Jake's birthdays, you were renting to complete strangers because $800 was more valuable to you than your grandson's happiness. William, you're taking this the wrong way. The wrong way? Mom, I have screenshots of your rental calendar. The weekend I requested for Emma's 6th birthday party, you rented to a family from Connecticut. You chose rental income over your granddaughter's birthday celebration. Before she could respond, Jessica called back. I looked at both phones ringing and realized this was the conversation I'd been preparing for since the day I'd overheard them planning Sophie's birthday party at the beach house. I need to go, Mom. I have a resort to run. But I want you and Jessica to think carefully about something. For 8 years, you've made my children feel unwelcome and unimportant. You've dismissed my career and my success. You've chosen convenience and money over family relationships. But we can fix this now. We're family. Yes, we are family. And I've spent the last year and a half building the most beautiful family resort on the East Coast. A place designed specifically for bringing families together and creating memories that last forever. I paused, looking out at the infinity pools where families would soon be laughing and playing together. Unfortunately, Mom, when I look at our booking calendar for the summer, I'm finding the same thing you found for 8 years. There just isn't room. The grand opening weekend exceeded every expectation. Ocean Vista Resort welcomed governors, senators, business leaders, and travel writers from the most prestigious publications in the country. The Boston Globe's review called it a masterpiece of family luxury that sets a new standard for East Coast hospitality. The New York Times travel section featured us on their front page with the headline, "Where Luxury Meets Family Values." But the most important guests that weekend were Emma and Jake, who finally got to experience what it felt like to be valued and celebrated. They rode horses on the beach, learned to sail in the protected cove, and fell asleep each night in an oceanfront suite larger than our entire apartment. "Daddy, did you really build all this for families?" Emma asked, as we watched the sunset from our private balcony. "I built it because every family deserves a place where they can be together and feel special," I told her. What I didn't tell her was that I'd also sent formal invitations to Mom and Jessica for the grand opening weekend. Beautiful, engraved invitations that arrived by messenger at their homes, inviting them to experience the resort as my personal guests. They both called within hours of receiving the invitations. Mom's call came first. "William, this is so generous. I'd love to attend your grand opening. When should David and I plan to arrive?" "Actually, Mom, the invitation is just for you and Jessica. It's not a family weekend, but Jessica's family will want to see the resort too. The children would love the pools and activities." "I'm sure they would. But this particular weekend is designed for adults only. You understand how sophisticated resort appreciation requires a mature perspective." I was using her own words from the wine-tasting weekend that had excluded my children 3 years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Jessica's call came that evening. "William, I'm so excited to see what you've built. Should I pack resort wear for the whole family?" "The invitation is for adults only, Jessica. I thought you'd appreciate the opportunity to experience luxury hospitality without the complications of managing children. But the kids would love to see Uncle William's resort. I'm sure they would love it. Unfortunately, managing multiple families with young children would change the whole dynamic of the weekend." Again, her own words thrown back at her. She was quiet for a moment before responding. "I see what you're doing." "What am I doing?" "You're punishing us for not including Emma and Jake in family vacations." "I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply applying the same logic you've used for years. Some people are resort people, and some aren't." The weekend arrived with perfect weather and flawless execution. Mom and Jessica arrived Friday afternoon in Jessica's BMW, looking nervous and out of place as they approached the grand entrance where uniformed valets waited to assist guests. I met them on the marble steps wearing a custom-tailored suit, looking every inch the successful resort owner I'd become. Behind me, the resort bustled with activity as senators, governors, and Fortune 500 executives enjoyed welcome cocktails on the oceanfront terrace. "William, this is incredible," Mom said, staring up at the columns and crystal chandeliers visible through the massive windows. "Thank you. I'm proud of what we've built here." Jessica was taking in the helicopter pad where aircraft arrived every few minutes, the fleet of luxury vehicles in the circular drive, and the obvious wealth of the other guests. "I can't believe you did all this." "Believe it. Would you like me to show you around?" The tour I gave them was carefully choreographed. I showed them the presidential suite where the governor of Massachusetts was staying, pointing out the hand-painted murals and imported Italian marble. I walked them through the spa where Fortune 500 executives were receiving treatments, highlighting the amenities designed for the most discerning guests. But what I really wanted them to see were the family areas they'd never allowed my children to experience anywhere else. The children's pool complex with water slides and fountains, the beach activity center where kids could learn sailing and marine biology, the stables where children took riding lessons along the shore. All of this is designed for families, I explained as we watched other guests' children playing happily in the pools while their parents relaxed on comfortable loungers nearby. The entire philosophy of the resort is that luxury and family time shouldn't be mutually exclusive. Mom was looking around with obvious discomfort. It must be very expensive for families to stay here. Our family packages start at $3,000 per night for oceanfront suites that sleep 6 people. But the experience is priceless. Children get to feel valued and included in luxury environments that create lifelong memories. Jessica had been unusually quiet during the tour. Finally, she spoke up. "William, I think we need to talk honestly about the past few years." "What about them?" "I owe you an apology. We treated you and your children unfairly." We were standing on the main balcony overlooking the Atlantic, the same view I'd dreamed of sharing with Emma and Jake during all those rejected vacation requests. Other families were gathered below us, parents and children creating memories together in a place designed specifically for connection. "What specifically are you apologizing for, Jessica?" "For not making room for Emma and Jake. For dismissing your career. For making you feel like your family wasn't important to us." Mom nodded vigorously. "I'm sorry too, William. I was wrong about the beach house. I should have found ways to include everyone." I appreciated their words, but apologies couldn't undo 8 years of exclusion and dismissal. More importantly, I needed to know if they'd actually learned anything from experiencing their own exclusion. That evening at the welcome dinner, I gave them front row seats to watch how successful, wealthy families actually treated each other. Senator Richardson's family included 4 children ranging from age 5 to 15. Throughout the elegant 5-course meal, the parents made sure each child felt valued and included in conversations. When the youngest wanted to share a story about finding a hermit crab on the beach, the entire table listened with genuine interest. I watched Mom and Jessica observing these interactions, seeing how natural inclusion looked when parents prioritized their children's emotional needs over social convenience. After dinner, as other guests moved to the terrace for live jazz music, I invited Mom and Jessica to join me in the resort's private library for the conversation I'd been planning for 18 months. "I want to share something with you both," I began, pulling out a folder I'd prepared. "These are the occupancy records from the beach house for the past 3 years. I spread the printed pages across the mahogany table, showing them rental confirmations, payment records, and guest reviews from families who'd stayed at the cottage during weekends I'd requested for my children. Memorial Day weekend, 2021. When you told me Jessica's family had reserved the house for David's medical conference colleagues, you actually rented it to the Morrison family from Hartford for $1,600. Jessica stared at the documents. "I never told Mom about any medical conference colleagues." Mom's face went pale. I thought you had mentioned something about David's work." Labor Day weekend that same year, when you claimed Jessica was hosting a wine tasting for sophisticated adults, you rented to a family reunion group from New Jersey. They left a 5-star review, specifically praising how perfect the house was for bringing multiple generations together. I pulled out more papers. Christmas week 2022, while my children slept on the living room floor, you had confirmed reservations from strangers for the following 3 weekends, earning $2,400. The silence in the library was deafening. Outside, I could hear the sounds of families enjoying evening activities together, children laughing as their parents helped them make s'mores around the beach fire pit. "You chose rental income over your grandchildren's happiness," I said quietly. "You invented stories about family conflicts and scheduling problems to justify excluding Emma and Jake, then rented their spaces to strangers for money." Mom was crying now. "I never meant for it to hurt them, but it did hurt them." Emma stopped asking about Grandma's beach house because she learned that other people's children were always more important than she was. Jessica wiped her eyes. "We were horrible to you, And the kids. Yes, you were. But more than that, you taught my children that family relationships are conditional, that love depends on convenience and profit margins. I closed the folder and looked at both of them directly. So I want you to understand something very clearly. I didn't build this resort to punish you or to show off my success. I built it because every family deserves a place where they can feel valued and included, where children's needs matter as much as adults' convenience. The moment had arrived for the decision I'd been contemplating throughout the weekend. The next morning, I found Mom and Jessica having breakfast alone on the terrace, looking out at the Atlantic while other families enjoyed the beach activities below. They both seemed smaller somehow, diminished by the reality of their behavior over the past 8 years. I approached their table carrying a leather portfolio that contained the future of our family relationships. "I've been thinking about our conversation last night," I said, taking a seat across from them, "and I've made some decisions about how we move forward." Jessica looked up nervously. "William, we meant everything we said about being sorry. I believe you. But apologies don't undo damage, and they don't automatically rebuild trust." I opened the portfolio and pulled out the printed occupancy records one more time. But this time I also included photographs Emma had drawn over the years. Pictures of beach houses with stick-figure families, always showing herself and Jake standing outside while other family members were safely inside. Emma drew these pictures after family gatherings where she felt excluded. This one shows Grandma's beach house with Madison, Connor, and Sophie playing in the waves while she and Jake watch from the road. Mom's tears started flowing again as she looked at her granddaughter's innocent artwork depicting such profound rejection. This one shows Christmas morning at the beach house. Notice how she drew herself and Jake in the living room while everyone else is upstairs in beds. Jessica covered her mouth with her hand. I never realized she was paying such close attention. Children always pay attention. They internalize everything, especially messages about whether they're wanted and valued by their own family. I pulled out another document. "These are the rental reviews from families who stayed at your beach house, Mom. Listen to what the Morrison family wrote. Perfect house for bringing our whole family together. The kids loved having space to play while the adults could relax. We felt so welcomed and included in this beautiful family home." The irony was devastating. Strangers had felt more welcomed in Mom's family home than her own grandchildren ever had. "But here's what I've learned from building this resort," I continued. "Exclusion is a choice, and inclusion is also a choice. Families can choose to make room for everyone, or they can choose to prioritize comfort and convenience over relationships." I closed the portfolio and looked directly at both of them. "I'm choosing inclusion. Not because you've apologized, but because Emma and Jake deserve to grow up knowing that family means making space for each other, no matter what." Jessica looked confused. "What does that mean?" "It means that starting this summer, Ocean Vista Resort will host an annual family reunion weekend. Every member of our family is invited, including David and all the children. Emma and Jake will finally get to experience what it feels like to be welcomed and celebrated by their own family." Mom's face lit up with hope. "Really? You do that after everything we've put you through?" "I'm not doing it for you, Mom. I'm doing it for my children, and for Jessica's children too. Madison, Connor, and Sophie deserve to know their cousins. They deserve to understand that family relationships are about love and inclusion, not competition and hierarchy." I pulled out the final document in my portfolio, a beautifully designed invitation for the first annual family reunion weekend. There are, however, new rules for how our family operates. Everyone pays their own way for resort stays, just like any other guests. There are no special family discounts or free accommodations. Jessica nodded. "That's completely fair. Family reunion weekend is planned and hosted equally by all family members. No one person gets to make unilateral decisions about activities or accommodations." "Of course," Mom agreed eagerly. "And most importantly, every child in this family gets treated with equal respect and consideration. Emma and Jake's needs matter just as much as Madison, Connor, and Sophie's needs." I handed them each a copy of the reunion invitation. "This year's theme is making room for everyone. I thought you'd appreciate the irony." Over the following months, something beautiful happened. Our first family reunion weekend wasn't perfect, but it was genuine. Jessica's children got to know Emma and Jake as real people instead of distant relatives they rarely saw. Mom made obvious efforts to engage with my children equally, asking about their school projects and celebrating their achievements. More importantly, I watched my own children begin to heal from years of feeling excluded. Emma started drawing pictures of beach houses where everyone was inside together. Jake stopped asking why some family members didn't like us. The business impact of the resort exceeded all projections. We were booked solid through the next 2 summers, with waiting lists for our family packages. Travel publications featured us regularly as the gold standard for luxury family resorts. But the personal satisfaction went far deeper than financial success. I'd learned that the most powerful response to "there's no room" isn't anger or resentment. It's creating your own space, and then choosing to use that space for healing rather than revenge. The following Christmas, we held our family celebration at Ocean Vista Resort instead of Mom's beach house. This time, every child had their own beautiful room. Every family member felt valued and included, and the conversations were about shared experiences rather than competitions or hierarchies. On Christmas morning, as I watched Emma and Jake opening presents alongside their cousins in the resort's grand salon, Mom approached me quietly. "William, I need to tell you something. Watching you choose forgiveness over punishment, inclusion over exclusion, you've taught me what family leadership actually looks like." "What do you mean?" "I spent years using the beach house as a tool for control and favoritism. You built something 10 times larger and more beautiful, and you're using it to bring people together. That's the difference between managing a family and leading one." Jessica overheard and joined our conversation. "He's right, Mom. William didn't just build a resort. He built a new foundation for how our family relates to each other." The final validation came from an unexpected source. Madison, Jessica's oldest daughter, who was now 13, pulled me aside after dinner. "Uncle William, I want to thank you for including Emma and Jake in everything. I never realized how mean we were being before. They're actually really fun to hang out with." "What made you realize that?" "Emma told me about all the times she drew pictures of beach houses where she and Jake were left outside. It made me feel terrible. I never want any kid to feel like that because of something our family did." Standing there in the resort lobby, surrounded by family members who were finally treating each other with genuine love and respect, I realized I'd achieved something more valuable than business success. I'd broken a cycle of favoritism and exclusion that could have damaged my children's understanding of family relationships for their entire lives. The resort continues to thrive, hosting families from around the world who want to experience luxury hospitality designed specifically for creating connections across generations. But every summer, during our family reunion weekend, I'm reminded of the real reason I built this place. It wasn't to prove my success or get revenge on people who'd hurt me. It was to show my children that when someone tells you there isn't room, you have choices. You can accept exclusion, or you can create inclusion. You can perpetuate patterns of hurt, or you can break them. I learned that sometimes the best way to change people's hearts is to show them their own reflection. When Mom and Jessica experienced exclusion themselves, they finally understood what they'd been doing to my children. But more importantly, when they saw me choose inclusion over revenge, they learned what family leadership actually looks like. Emma is 11 now, and Jake is 9. They're growing up with the unshakable knowledge that they are valued, wanted, and included in their family. They're learning that love means making room for each other, not finding reasons to exclude. And they're building relationships with their extended family based on mutual respect, rather than hierarchy or competition. That's worth more than all the money in the world. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever experienced a situation where family members made you feel excluded or unvalued? How did you handle it, and what did you learn from the experience? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like to help other people discover it. And if you enjoyed hearing about how families can choose inclusion over exclusion, consider subscribing for more stories about overcoming challenges and building stronger relationships. Don't forget to share this with anyone who might benefit from understanding that sometimes the most powerful response to rejection is creating your own space and choosing to fill it with love. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that you have more power to change difficult family situations than you might realize. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is showing them that they deserve to be valued and included, and that we're willing to fight for their happiness in creative and constructive ways. May your own family relationships be filled with the kind of love that makes room for everyone.